Jeff, who is calling in from Ohio, who thinks AI should be regulated to prevent the avoidance of responsibility for dangerous decisions. Interesting. Jeff, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, guys. So I could give you a million reasons why I think AI should be regulated, but let's stick with that one for now. My biggest concern would be that when an algorithm makes a poor choice and somebody dies, who do you hold responsible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a pretty succinct way to put it.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. What do you do in that circumstance? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I like you should give a good example of how that can happen for people, I think. Do you have one?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Self-driving cars, right?
Yeah.
You have some bad recognition algorithm, and it runs over a kid. Several people have been killed by self-driving cars, if I recall correctly, already. And to some extent, they tried to lay the blame at the feet of the people who were supposed to be operating the vehicles because they failed to intervene or whatever. They got too comfortable. But to me, that's really a failure to deliver on the promise of a self-driving vehicle, right? So to give somebody the ability to put their attention elsewhere and relax behind the wheel and then say, well, it was your fault for relaxing on the wheel. Sorry, I don't buy it. I think this ties into another reason that you might want to regulate AI. Namely, you can do very, very dangerous things with it. I think the most obvious reason you might want to regulate AI is to prevent it from being used to harm people specifically. And I think that this has been an issue before people became familiarized with large language models and we started to have this hype storm around, Skynet or whatever. They were using AI to identify targets, et cetera. Letting an algorithm take the responsibility off your shoulders for deciding whether or not this is the person you're supposed to kill, for example, is, I think, like a heinous neglect of duty.
Yeah, I agree. Now, people will make the case too, and they'll be like, well, once self-driving cars are everywhere, then we're probably going to have less deaths on average than we will with people driving normally. And I think that, yeah, we might be able to get to that point, but we're definitely far from that point, right? Like we only have so many self-driving cars out there. It's really not as much compared to the average population. We're already seeing a lot of these issues. Now, obviously, you're going to expect there to be issues even with self-driving cars. Self-driving cars aren't going to fix it, but we got to be safe with this stuff. We got to be able to make decisions for these things. And again, as you mentioned, how is accountability going to affect this, especially when it comes to like insurance and stuff, right?
You raise a good point. Suppose you're in a society where all vehicles are self-driving and you do have an accident. Nonetheless, who is to blame? Who's held accountable for that,
Yeah. Or not even just cars. What about ships doing freight routes, right? What about, planes that are driving people, there's a lot of different kinds of factors that I don't know is beyond my expertise.
I'll tell you what, this is my area of research. And I find it really interesting the levels to which other algorithmic procedures had to rise before they could be incorporated in any dangerous decision making. So this is before AI. AI, machine learning, it's all sort of a thin veil over a common problem solving technique where you're just trying to write an algorithm that gets better as it accumulates data, right? But there are other approaches to these deterministic approaches. Like I worked in the oil, gas, petrochemical industry for a while, assessing fitness for service and determining whether or not things were going to explode or whatever, right? And when you would need to do a really dangerous, we have to make a really dangerous choice, you would always rely on the highest fidelity modeling that you could in order to get the most accurate answer that you could. And the only reason they feel comfortable allowing people to model those situations and make those dangerous decisions is because they have provable correctness. You can show that the algorithms you're using will be accurate to an arbitrary decimal point for whatever problem you're positing, right? With machine learning, it's very hard to get those guarantees. People are working on sort of proofs of error and bounds on the error in these machine learning algorithms, but you don't get the same guarantees that you do from a more principled physics-based approach or deterministic approach in that way. So I understand the hesitation to use these things for dangerous decisions and dangerous applications, and I think they're warranted.
Yeah. Maybe it's like this, right? Where we have an accident with Boeing, for example, right? When a plane doesn't work the way that they expect it to do, you have these gigantic recalls, and you have these big system reviews, right? With a lot of agencies involved, with a lot of documentation. Maybe that's what it has to be for algorithms like this, right? Maybe that's what it has to be for any kinds of new models that come out for any kinds of big industry shifting, I don't know, or things where people's lives are involved with these kinds of models. Maybe there is a way that we can make it more safe, I guess, for people to use these things. But that in itself, I mean, is an incredible amount of regulation, right? That seems to me to be the only real ethical thing to do. But yeah, I don't know.
I don't have faith that the people making those decisions, even at the level of regulation, that they know enough to be making something. Like some of the times I've listened to some roundtables, and I thought to myself, like, none of these people should be making decisions about regulation. They just don't know enough. They're not informed enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe not hopeful though.
I hear you.
To be true for a lot of things, I think. Basically anything people are making choices about.
Yeah,
that's true. And I hear you, Jeff. It's like, who is going to be an expert on this stuff, right? Because, like, again, we already talked about this. You become a domain expert in one particular thing, and just because you know how one AI model works doesn't mean you immediately know how all other models work, right? And the intricacies therein. You can certainly have a background that'll help, but I don't know. It's just going to get more and more complicated from here, right? And we know how planes work for the most part, right? I'm assuming the people who build planes know how the planes work. As these models become more complicated, are we really going to fully understand how it's working? I'm skeptical of that too, but I don't know.
I think there'll always be more to learn, more to find out about it. But like, kind of like you were saying earlier, it's the worst that it's going to be right now. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes the result of it being the worst it's going to be is like, oh, it says a funny sentence that doesn't make sense. Sometimes the result is like it accelerates into the back of a police car because it's a self-driving car that didn't detect the car in front of it. So, I mean, there's different tiers of how problematic that can be, but it'll just keep getting better.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Was there anything else you want to add, Jeff? Oh, hello. Well, Jeff, we might have lost you there. But anyway, Jeff, thanks so much for calling in.